Carol Beaumont.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I too rise to speak in support of the Regulatory Improvement Bill and acknowledge the work of my colleague, the Honourable Leanne Dalzell. And like others, I probably will mention her several times in this 5-minute contribution, but I'm sure I won't be able to reach the heights of David Parker. But it shouldn't be taken as any less of an indication of the esteem with which I hold my colleague. Now, this bill is an omnibus bill that makes amendments to 9 pieces of legislation with the objective of improving the regulatory framework and reducing the compliance burden on business, introduced, of course, by the Honourable Leanne Dalzell. Now, I want to acknowledge the Minister and the Chair, the Honourable Rodney Hyde, something I don't often do, but I do want to acknowledge the fact that he has recognised the work that was undertaken by the previous government and by the previous Minister here, the Honourable Leanne Dalzell. Now, I think that's important to acknowledge because often it is said that Labor does not support business in this country. And I think the fact that this bill is here is a very clear example of the contrary, that in fact Labor does support business in New Zealand, that we have worked very hard to improve the regulatory environment that business operates in. And I know for a fact that in her previous capacity as Minister, the Honourable Leanne Dalzell, in fact, was absolutely passionate about improving the environment for business. And I came across her in that capacity in a number of ways myself prior to being in Parliament, both as a member of the Small Business Advisory Group and as the Secretary of the New Zealand Council of Trade Unions. And like the fact that people don't necessarily believe that Labor is business friendly, incorrectly as it transpires, likewise people often don't recognise that the trade union movement has a very real interest in ensuring that our businesses are successful and that they do not face unnecessary regulatory impediments, because in fact this is about having successful, good quality businesses that people can work in. Now, I want to go on and actually talk about one of the submissions to this bill, but can I just say that obviously the bill was a result of quite an extensive process, a process of actually 15 months of talking with people, of identifying barriers and recognising that when business deals with various acts of Parliament and various agencies of government, they don't necessarily see them separately. They often see them as a single entity, the government. I'm from the government, I'm here to help you, was one of the catch cries. Now, one of the submissions that was made to the Select Committee, the Commerce Select Committee, chaired of course by the Honourable Leanne Dalzell, was a submission made by the Motor Trade Association. And I just want to note one of the provisions, because they are talking particularly about the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act, the HASNO Act, and there have been significant changes made to that piece of legislation as a result of this work. In fact, probably in Part 6 you will see quite a significant raft of changes to the HASNO Act. Now, the submission of the Motor Trade Association was talking about the fact that collision repairers and service station operators frequently come up against hazardous substances, and where appropriate their businesses obtain the necessary site and approved handler certificates as required by the HASNO Act. However, they also advise their member organisations to keep stock of their hazardous substances below the trigger points for licensing. Now, that is a thing that's sensible, common sense arrangement, and that then enables them to work out the appropriate risk management practices in their workplace. And I'm now coming to a point that they raised, which I think is an important one for the Minister to note. They raised their concern that 2 territorial authorities decided to require businesses to provide them with inventories of substances below the trigger points listed in the HASNO Act. And when questioned about that, they were told that they were requiring businesses to provide such a list in terms of the Health and Safety in Employment Act. Now, the Select Committee process followed through with that particular concern of the submitter, and we're told by officials that the points raised by the submitter are valid. However, they relate to operational matters, and they have been referred to the appropriate agencies where they are being addressed at an administrative level. Now, the reason I'm raising this is I would like to know from the Minister whether that has been done, because one of the issues around regulation is not just the law but the operation of the law. So, Mr Chair, can I just follow that through?
The member's time has expired.
Yep. I did
Stop.
call again.
You did? No, you didn't.
I did. I said, Mr Chair, if you take the Hansard record, you would find that, sir.
You should do that immediately the bell rings, and then I'm not confused as to whether you're referring to me as a matter of emphases, as some people do. The member just continued to talk after the bell. So I'm just wanting to clear up how we should do this. So is the member seeking a call? Carol Beaumont.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair, and I will make sure I'm much more clear on the matter next time. Mr Chair, as I was saying, I have got a question to the Minister, and it is an important one, because this is an area where you get the overlap between what the law and regulation says and what the operational practice on the ground is. And the Motor Trade Association did raise a very valid point. Officials recognised that valid point and said that they were going to ensure that the relevant organisations were looking at the various administrative arrangements in regard to this sort of matter. So I would say to the Minister, on this side of the House, we'd be grateful to know how that work is going, because on a common sense level, that's going to be the sort of thing that actually makes a difference on the ground. Thank you.
Raymond Ho.